The gospel accounts that we have of Jesus Christ, I think, are amazingly reliable documents. They have stood the test of time and they have so much information in them that you can test. They give you details of the time and place that Jesus lived, the sorts of pieces of information that no one who hadn't actually been to those places or had talked to people who'd been to those places would possibly know. When we look at the Gospels, we can read that they are credible, they're not sensationalized accounts, and they give us the sorts of things that we can investigate because there are 4 Gospels, and you can look at the way each one of those relates to the other one. They've all got material which they have in common with the other Gospels. They've also got different material, and that means we can check them against each other. There are differences in the accounts. Sometimes people say that those differences are like contradictions which suggest that the accounts can't all be reliable. But I find that when I look at the differences in the accounts, it only gives me confidence that these accounts haven't all come from the same source. They haven't all come from a group trying to collude together to make the story look authentic. Rather, you find in those differences hallmarks of authenticity, the sorts of differences you'd often find when several truthful people all record the same event that they've seen. So when we look at the accounts, we see that Jesus in the Gospels teaches in parables. And we know that that was a hallmark of the way he spoke. But the early Christians, the followers of Jesus, hardly used parables at all. So if they made up the story of Jesus, why would they make him speak in a way different from the way they spoke? The sorts of things Jesus taught about was he taught about how we should be in a right relationship with God, but he didn't teach about the sorts of things that early Christians might have wanted to know, like how to run a church service or how to include non-Jews in the church. He didn't talk about that at all. So if they'd been making up things and putting them onto Jesus' lips, I think they would have written rather different stories. I think they would have written, putting onto Jesus' lips the sorts of things you'd want him to say, but they don't. Then we can find some other remarkable things about Jesus' teaching. We find that the way he talks about himself is different from the way the later Christians talked about him. His favourite expression for himself was the Son of Man, and yet the early Christians hardly ever used that title. So we see the way Jesus talks in the Gospels is different from the way people would have made things up. We also find that there are these accounts of miracles. There are more miracles attributed to Jesus than to any other person from that period. And it's not just that there's one type of miracle, there's many different types of miracles. No one early on denied that Jesus performed miracles. In the Jewish accounts, in the Talmud, they refer to him as a sorcerer, which precisely means that they thought that he performed miracles. They were just saying that he had performed them through bad power. But what we find is that the gospel accounts of miracles allow us to test them. They have good local knowledge, something like the feeding of the 5,000, which is an account told in all 4 Gospels, has local details about the geography, about the grass that was there at the time, about the time of the year, about the barley loaves that were used, all of which are very precise pieces of information. So I find when I look at the accounts in the Gospels, I find them very credible. And I would say that the best way to see that is to read them for yourself.